Welcome to Kent ISD Literacy Leaders and Coaches Network Remote Edition. We are excited to bring you our 13th episode of the LLCN Brief. We appreciate those that are now following us on your preferred podcast outlet and excited to share that we now have about 2,300 plus unique listens to our previous 12 podcast episodes. These listens come from 21 different countries and 38 different states. We appreciate that you are finding value in the information we are making available for you. Thank you for continuing to share our message with those that you know will benefit from listening.
This episode will lean into learning centered around essential number 10 of the Essential Instructional Practices in Early Literacy K3, collaboration with families in promoting literacy. I'm Sarah Shoemaker, Early Literacy Coach at Kent ISD.
And I'm Mark Raffler, educational consultant, also from Kent ISD. Post pandemic, our nation, our state, our communities, our schools, and our families have been working hard to get back to where we were academically, socially, and emotionally. This has proven to be hard work that has required an unwavering focus on many different details in our lives. Many are taking on the challenge of this work and showing great success at doing so. However, it is difficult to do this alone. What if we could explore ways to share the efforts of this work? What if we could explore connections where our communities, our schools, and our families could find a way to work together to continue to offer the best to all our students? The potential in this type of collaboration is vast. How can we look to make it happen more often? We will explore evidence based studies that demonstrate how communities, schools, and families have worked together for all to win in this episode of our podcast.
Today, our guest, Dr. Karen Mapp, joins us for an in depth exploration of this topic based on her book, Everyone Wins: The Evidence for Family School Partnerships and Implications for Practice.
We are honored to have Dr. Karen Mapp joining us today. Dr. Mapp is a senior lecturer on education at the Harvard Graduate School of Education and former faculty director of the Harvard Graduate School of Education Policy and Management Master's Program. Over the past 20 years, her research and practice focus has been the cultivation of partnerships among families, community members, and educators that support student achievement and school improvement. Dr. Mapp holds a doctorate and master's of education from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, a master's in education from Southern Connecticut State University, and a bachelor's degree in psychology from Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. She is a founding member of the District Leaders Network on Family and Community Engagement and serves on the board of the National Association for Family, School, and Community Engagement, the Hyams Foundation, and is the board chair for the Institute for Educational Leadership. From 2011 to 2013, Dr. Mapp served as a consultant on family and community engagement to the United States Department of Education in the Office of Innovation and Improvement. Dr. Mapp is the author and co author of several articles and books about the role of families and community members in the work of student achievement and school improvement. Some of her earlier works include A New Wave of Evidence: The Impact of School, Family, and Community Connections on Student Achievement, published in 2002, Beyond the Bake Sale: The Essential Guide to Family School Partnerships, published in 2010. And this one in particular was one that we've had the chance here in Western Michigan to hear more about when she presented at Western Michigan University. To more recently, her publications, Partners in Education: A Dual Capacity Building Framework for School Family Partnerships. The original framework was published in 2014, and a new framework has been released in 2019. Powerful Partnerships: A Teacher's Guide to Engaging Families for Student Success, published in 2017. Embracing a New Normal Toward a More Liberatory Approach to Family Engagement, 2021. And what we're here to talk about today, Everyone Wins: The Evidence for Family School Partnerships and Implications for Practice, just recently published in fall of 2022. Thanks for joining us today, Dr. Mapp.
I'm glad to be here, Mark. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Family involvement, family engagement, family partnerships, all terms used to indicate schools and families should work together for the benefit of students. Dr. Mapp, will you talk with us about why you chose to use the term family partnerships in your latest work?
Thanks, Sarah, for that question. Family engagement, I believe, is sort of the header for a lot of what we talk about when we talk about this relationship between school staff, educators, practitioners, community members, and families. And I actually really like their a working definition that was developed by the State Department of Education in Connecticut. And one of the reasons I really like this definition of family engagement is because it was co-designed, and that's something that I push a lot, this idea of co-design and co-creation with families and educators throughout the state of Connecticut. And that says that family engagement is a full, equal, and equitable partnership among the adult caregivers, community members, and practitioners. So you can see that to get to that full engagement, we're really talking about a partnership. Partnership requires that we collaborate with one another, that we trust each other. So I think that that's why we're moving towards using the term partnership a lot more because I think in pretty much everyone's minds, you know that a partnership does require that you are really working with the other person in a way where there's mutual understanding, trust, and that you really have a goal.
Thank you for sharing that insight into the terms that you're using in your work. We can see that this definition, with the emphasis on full, equal, and equitable partnership, should mimic a good relationship in any sort of form when you emphasize that it's built on that trust and communication.
Absolutely. One of the things that we talk about in the dual capacity building framework for family school partnerships, which I originally worked on this in collaboration with the Department of Education. So when I was asked to be sort of a consultant advisor to the USDOE in the Office of Innovation and Improvement, one of the first things I did was I went around to the different departments at the Department of Ed and I asked people, what do you need in terms of a tool or some sort of guidance or support on what really good family engagement looks like? And what they talked about was that, there really wasn't anything out there that told people what good practice looked like. How do you get there? How do you get to that full, equal, and equitable partnership? How do you make it so that family engagement is effective? And so when I authored the first dual capacity framework for family school partnerships, we were really trying to provide a tool for the field so that they would understand what does effective practice look like? What do you have to do? And I don't think that people really understood that, it really required first and foremost a relationship of trust with between families and educators. And as we move to the new framework, which was published in 2019, we really emphasize when we talk about what does it take to get to those full, equal, and equitable partnerships. We really talk about the role of trust. Some wonderful researchers in Chicago, Tony Breik and Barbara Schneider, have a wonderful book out there called Trust in Schools. And they talk about how relational trust is really the foundation for everything. And unfortunately, what I see when I do this work in districts and in other environments, people skip over the trust building piece. And without trust, nothing else works. There is going to be no partnership without trust. So, this is something that I talk about a lot with my students when I work with districts and schools around the country, around the world, actually, is the importance about spending time and being intentional about building trust between families and your staff.
Wow. So you've been in this work so long. You have such a passion about it, and it shows. And we're so grateful that you're willing to speak with us today to continue to update the work over time. As you mentioned, the first dual capacity framework came out in 2014, and then there's an updated version in 2019. And your expertise and your experience is so deep. We're excited to learn more from you today. Thank you.
You highlight the idea of schools moving their approach to interact with families from family involvement to family engagement. What are some key ideas to keep in mind in relation to family engagement?
So I think it was put best by Larry Ferlazzo, who is an extraordinary educator. I believe Larry might still be out in California. And he wrote a piece where he talked about how involvement, schools and organizations that are leaning into family involvement lead with their mouths, right? They talk at families, they assume families don't have any rich funds of knowledge. So everything is one way. We know best. We're the experts. We're going to tell you what to do, and we expect you to follow through with what we've asked you to do or what we've told you to do. He then says that engagement, when you lean into engagement, you lead with your ears. You're listening to families. You are going the extra mile to make sure that you check in with all of your families, not just the ones who have the access to the school or it's easy for them to come to the building or to interact with with teachers, but you go the extra mile to meet your families where they are and you listen. You ask questions. Families have a lot of knowledge, particularly about their kiddos. And we as educators, if we just would sit down and listen to families tell us stories about their children, if we ask them what their hopes and dreams are for their children, we would learn a lot that would really help us as educators. I've had teachers say to me, when I stopped doing all the talking and really started to provide opportunities for my families to tell me what their hopes and dreams were for their children or to tell me, what are the things that they've noticed about their children, particularly since the pandemic and families had a real chance to sort of oversee and watch what their children were doing, whether it was on Zoom or in those cases, a lot of teachers were starting to talk with families instead of at families because we had to work together. Teachers have said to me, I've learned so much about that child that I can now incorporate into my pedagogy. I'm a better teacher because I've listened to my families. And this goes for pre-K right up to high school. So again, Larry emphasizes that engagement, we're listening, it's a partnership versus involvement, which is really pretty much one way.
Yes, I appreciate the way that you brought about how some of that interaction has occurred. I think the idea, and if we were to ask even the educators that we work with, I think they would not necessarily intend to be leading with our mouths, as you put it. I think we would not even realize that we were, right? But I think when
Mhm.
we put those phrases in, lead with your ears, look for those hopes and dreams, and then as you mentioned, the opportunities for that to become more of a reality with what the pandemic created. It's not often that we say opportunity has arisen from the pandemic in a positive light, but I certainly can see how better understanding, getting to know, and better having access to and being in a position where we can ask those questions and truly lead with our ears, that has definitely shifted the way that we can move forward with making those connections with families. And then you use that concept of, when I do come to that piece to lead with my ears, you mentioned using hopes and dreams. And that's a great way to set up our audience to, if we're going to move to that piece of leading with our ears, what are some ways that we maybe can enter into those conversations, and asking around hopes and dreams, I think, is a good start for that.
Mhm. And Mark, one of the things that I do not blame educators and practitioners for not knowing how to engage with families because guess what? We've done a really poor job in our preparation programs to help teachers and others learn the effective high impact practices when working with families. And you mentioned that I'm on the board of NAFSCE, the National Association for Family, School, and Community Engagement. Last night in my class, I was honored to have Vito Borello, who is the executive director of NAFSCE, come speak to my students. And he talked about how NAFSCE has done some wonderful research and has found that, in a lot of our schools of education, many of our teacher training programs, our principal training programs, they skip over the family engagement piece. So NAFSCE is working hard to do something about that, working with state education agencies around the country to get them to include family engagement proficiency as a part of what we're going to be looking for in our new teachers, which then will force, hopefully, our schools of education to do a better job of making this a part of what they do when they train our practitioners. It's a skill. It's not easy, and we've got plenty of research that's interviewed teachers to say that this is the number one area where they feel the most least prepared when they go in to become a teacher. The number one area. We were not trained on how to work with our families. So, again, I don't want to suggest that, our teachers, there's something wrong with them. That's absolutely not the case. Most of them that I've met say, I want to be better at engaging families, but I've never been trained to do it the correct way.
Yeah, that's a very good point that you make. And it's great, that you're in the opportunity to make that portion of reality. But I think our institutes of higher ed are working toward integrating these pieces to help those teachers, students to become teachers, be better equipped and better prepared. So it's great to hear that those things are moving forward.
Hmm.
One theme that seems to come up throughout the Everyone Wins book is an emphasis on two-way communication. Many schools would say they are currently communicating with their families and communities. What are some key components, Dr. Mapp, to consider as they move towards practicing two-way communication?
Thanks, Sarah. Well, we've talked about it a little bit where I think that, again, because we haven't had an opportunity to train our practitioners the way we should, there becomes a mindset that develops. Sometimes, unfortunately, it's a deficit-based mindset about families, particularly our families who come from disenfranchised communities, who come from communities of poverty, families who may not speak English well. Sometimes there's an assumption that develops, unfortunately, and this assumption a lot of times is baked into our systems and our structures by the way they're set up to not have two-way communication with families. What ends up happening is that we begin to embrace this perception that our families really don't know much, and they don't have much to share. And in some severe cases, I hear things like, well, our families don't care. And so consequently, if you don't think your families care, then you're not going to be leaning into a two-way communication mode. You're going to be in a one-way communication mode where you feel like you have to talk at your families or tell them what to do. But once families are seen as, one of my colleagues, Shante Toole, talks about families being the geniuses that they are, and we start to understand that families have what's called funds of knowledge, parent knowledge, that's really valuable to us as practitioners, then this is where we start to say, well, two-way communication makes a whole lot of sense because we really want to listen to our families. We want to listen to what they know about their kids. In some cases, what they know about their communities. Because if we're trying to start community partnerships, who better than the families who live and work in those communities to sort of tip us off as to some of the places where we might want to pursue partnerships? So it's taking on that attitude that our families are valued partners, again, equal partners with us. They have all of this wonderful experience and knowledge that, if tapped and if leveraged, really helps us to makes us better practitioners. So two-way communication could be in the form of just changing up the way we do phone calls home. So, I talk to a lot of family members, and to teachers and they say, boy, when our families see that it's a call from the school, sometimes they don't want to pick up because they know, unfortunately, that a lot of times it's negative information. But what happens if we change that up and we made phone calls home to families where we said to them, you are your child's first teacher. And as such, I'm going to be your child's, fourth grade teacher or ninth grade history teacher. And I would love to know, could you tell me some things about your child that I should know to make me the best teacher I can be? Imagine starting out the conversation that way. I've actually had some schools that have done this practice now where they make those kinds of phone calls home to families, and families are stunned. They say, this is the first time anybody's ever really asked me questions about my child. Usually they call me to tell me what time I have to do pickup and drop off, or, it's about logistics. It's nothing about, the academic goals and how I can help you as a teacher reach those goals. So you see, it's not really that hard. I think that what we have to do is, take practices that we are using now, which in many cases are not effective. I do have a lot of people say to me, well, teachers have a lot on their plates and you're asking them to do this two-way communication and that sounds like it's going to be a lot of work. Well, actually, many teachers I talk to, many principals I talk to, and others say this has made our jobs easier because now we're getting all this information, this great information from our families that helps us. We talk about differentiated instruction for students. Who better than the families to sort of tip us off as to the things that their kiddos are challenged by, the things that they're good at. So again, and we have some studies in Everyone Wins that talk about how teachers like working in schools where there's strong family engagement because they feel more excited. They've got partners. Once one teacher I interviewed one time said the families were the winds beneath her wings. Why she wanted to come to school every day because she knew she had these partners.
Dr. Mia, but so much insight into how we can use this opportunity with families to better do our jobs as educators, right? To build that educator satisfaction, but build that community satisfaction with our schools, to build those partnerships with families, to say, families, you are the wealth of knowledge. You've had 5 years, 9 years, 15 years with this child. Tell us what makes the child work. Where are their passions? Where are their interests? Where are their challenges? What can we do to make your child feel seen and heard here
Mhm.
and valued? And when we do that with families, they feel seen and heard, and then are building that foundation of trust that we talked about already in this interview, and creating that value equal partnership.
Absolutely, Sarah. It just makes so much difference. And I do think that I want to emphasize here for our educators that this makes you feel more fulfilled. We've got so much data now that talks about how educators really end up feeling very differently about their jobs when they are able to have this kind of wonderful partnership with families. So, again, I think that it's hard. I mean, people in some cases are fearful of this, especially if they've never been trained. But once they lean into it, once they see how families are so glad that, as you said, that they are being seen by the school, and guess what? The kids notice too. When we start noticing and partnering with their families and embracing their families and valuing their families, it makes a difference to the children because they feel seen. You're seeing my family. You're listening to my family. And it really makes a difference sometimes in how the kids feel about school and about themselves.
So true. Kids watch everything we do as adults, right? And that's part of how they learn how to just exist in our society based on the interactions they witness from other people. So having that positive interaction between school staff and the rest of their extended family beyond the child that's in the classroom is only going to build that positive interaction. I
And
have to
Sarah, I'm
say.
glad you mentioned something just then that we should also emphasize. We're talking about all adult caregivers here. So we're not just talking about when we say family. That's one of the reasons why we've moved to family engagement and not parent engagement or parent involvement, because we really want the world to know we're talking about all adult caretakers. So that could be grandma, grandpa, auntie, uncle, all those cousins or fictive kin that, you can never figure out how they're really related to you. We're talking about any of those people who are there for our kids.
So true. And knowing that there may be other people in the home or um, extended time with those people, whether they're cousins or siblings, right? Those people are important to the life of that student. And the more we embrace that circle of who cares for and who is important to that child, the better relationship we're going to have.
Right.
I have to say, Dr. Mapp, when Mark and I were brainstorming to get ready for this interview with you, one of the things we noted was that the chapter 2 in the book, and this didn't come out in our questions, but it was something we had talked about, um, was right away the benefit to teachers
Mhm.
with this partnership. And you just referenced some of that in the answer. And I think, golly, in a book like this, you wouldn't expect chapter 2 to be about the benefit to teachers of partnership. You'd expect it to be about families or student achievement. But you jump in right away to the benefits to teachers and the job satisfaction that comes from that. And so, thank you for highlighting that in this answer today.
And Sarah, you've warmed my heart because when we talked to the wonderful folks at Scholastic who were helping us with the book, they said to us, you need to move that chapter about the educators to the second after the students because that's going to be a big headline. Because, and that's, we're really proud in this book that we have the research that really talks about the benefit for educators. So we actually purposefully moved that to chapter 2. It was supposed to be 3, but we want us to sort of grab educators right off and say, okay, first they're probably really interested in the benefits for the students, but man, what's in it for them? So that was really strategic, and the fact that you mentioned that, that makes me feel good. I'll have to go back and tell them that we made the right decision.
Well, that was a win, yes, because it took us by surprise, but we were like, yes, you're hooking these educators in, right? You're saying this isn't just about more work, like you said. This is about
Mhm.
the partnership that's going to benefit all. So thank you.
You've referenced so many great studies in your work. Not all our listeners have had the opportunity to read the book yet. Share with us a study or two that stands out.
Oh, Mark, that's a tough one because the 40 that we chose, we looked at hundreds of studies and we picked 40 that we thought were well designed, obviously, and maybe told a bit of a different story. So Ann Henderson, who is my writing buddy and my sister from another mother is what we call each other because we're very close. We've been working together now for a lot of years, and so Anne had asked me to co-author with her a new wave of evidence back in 2002 because I actually had called her and said, "Hey, Anne, I think it's time for another one of your evidence series books," because she had been writing these. And she said, "Well, I'll do it, but only if you write it with me." So when we did the book in 2002, most of the studies that were out on the impact of engagement, the impact of partnership, were done on the impact on our students. But when we did this book, we were really pleased to see that the research had expanded to look at not only the effects on students of these partnerships, but the effects on educators, on families, on schools, and even on our communities. So I, I I I picked two studies for you today just because of what they represent. The first one is a study on the impact on students, but it's a study from Botswana. And I think one of the things that we want people to know is that people are doing this work all over the world. And it's nice to be able to include studies from different parts of the world. And so that was a study done in 2020, and it actually was a study on, how do we stem, so the learning interruption that was caused by the pandemic. So the researchers, Angus, Berman, Brewster, and Matcheg, really looked at, it was a randomized trial, and it was an intervention where they looked at um, phone calls from Botswana primary schools, and what they did was they found out was that the students who received these messages, right? So I think that they were using SMS messages and following those with phone calls to help remind families and help families on working around math problems with their students. Well, they found that the students who got that intervention, that got that phone call, that got those messages, did way better than the students in the control group. And so, again, families want support and information on how to support their children's learning. They don't just want phone calls, again, about logistics and things like that. So, again, and this is a low cost intervention that really had some pretty significant results. So I like this study. It's on page 118 of Everyone Wins, because again, it's a study that features a low cost intervention that was done in another country. And a lot of times, Mark, we feature a lot of our domestic studies, but we wanted to really we have a couple of other studies too, from other places around the world that talk to us about the impact of family engagement. And I think the other study I want to lift up is one that was done by the folks at the on the Parent Teacher Home Visit Project. And this was a study by McKnight, Venkataswaran, and I hope I said the last name correctly, Laird and Robles in 2017. And it was about how the act of doing a home visit. So this was a study about the parent teacher home visit model that was originated out of Sacramento. And what they found was they interviewed 175 teachers and family members. And they found that the act of doing a home visit, where practitioner and the family get a chance to talk and build a relationship, actually interrupts implicit biases that the educators and families have about one another. I love this study because it shows us that when we sit down, we work together, we end up seeing our families, and our families end up seeing us as human beings who really are really interested in making sure these children succeed. All of those biases that we breathe in, Beverly Tatum talks about the smog that we breathe in of racism and the other isms, and that, it's in the air, it's in the media, it's in the things that we read. And unfortunately, sometimes those biases seep in. We all have them, we all have to work on them. But what they found was that the act of doing this home visit actually interrupted these biases. We've talked a lot, and I know that how people feel about medicines and vaccines and things like that, and people have differences of opinions. But we find that I think that this relationship that develops between families and educators when they can sit down and break bread together, it's actually sort of the antidote to these biases. So I really, really enjoyed this study. And again, it gave us an opportunity to see what's the impact of this partnership on the adults. So it's a great benefits for them and not just for the students.
Yeah, in light of the conversation that we've had, I appreciate you picking a study for both the student side and for the adults that are involved in this opportunity to make connections for students. And I'm sure with all the studies that you already had limited it down to, it was difficult. So I appreciate you delving into that to give us a starting point. I about chuckled out loud when you mentioned the Botswana study, because I actually That was one of my favorites that I had picked out, actually,
Wow.
because it's crazy because it struck me because it was highlighting exactly as you referenced from, you know, outside of just the United States. And what also resonated with me was the math aspect of it,
Mhm.
because I know there's a lot of times as I've been helping my own student currently that if I could just see the problem, worked out, or ask about a step in a problem and how it was solved and do it in just a quick, efficient way, it would help me get more to the point on helping my own child work through the problem when he remembers parts and pieces of the process he was taught, but yet can't quite piece it all together. And I'm struggling with it too because I'm refreshing my own memory from having done it years ago, but to be able to just ask these quick questions about should we do this or that at this step of solving it. And again, that's why it stood out, because it was certainly a gain that would have been realized just even for me in the moment, even having helped my own child do math homework. And then the home visit, and just a clarification on the home visit, is that was it, like regular K-5 grade school, right? Not necessarily pre-K.
Well, I know that home visits are done, these parent-teacher home visits, and I do wanna emphasize, Mark, that this is a particular protocol that's done with
Okay.
these visits. So the parent-teacher home visit, group in California, they have a protocol, and actually people need to be trained into how to do what they call these relational home visits.
Okay.
So these are home visits which are done mainly, particularly the first visit, to build relationships of trust between educators and families. So, when the practitioners go into the home, they don't bring,
Hmm.
clipboards, there's no notebooks, there's no pens, it's them. And the whole purpose is to build a relationship. And so, people need to be trained because, not all home visits are alike, right? So some home visits, that have been done have there's a more punitive tone to them. Maybe people are showing up because a child has been absent. So it's not this sort of relational focus. And these visits I've seen done from pre-K right up to high school.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. And so we talk so much, and we've done podcasts around things where we talk about, you brought up the implicit bias. We talk about looking at curriculum. We talk about looking at books in our classrooms and things like that. But what a nice step back in referencing this, that these relational home visits can quite possibly even supersede any of that. Not that those things aren't important, but this is just another angle that we haven't talked a lot about, especially here in West Michigan. So a very good next step for us to consider and look further into that study in particular. Thanks for sharing those two.
Yeah, and Mark, you did say something just now, and I want to emphasize that, when I talk about these relationships of trust, we have all of this research now that's starting to tell us that, if there's a lot of animosity being stoked between teachers and educators, that is not going to be good for our children. It's just not. So I think a lot of what I'm hearing and I'm seeing about, all of this, um, these movements where teachers are being blamed, or there's all these demands where it's just creating a lot of rifts between teachers and educators. I can tell you, we know from the research that that's not going to benefit our kids. So I'm really pushing for us, we say full, equal, and equitable partnership, but that partnership is also built on trust. And so, any of these movements that are designed to divide educators and families, in the end, I don't think are going to benefit the students.
Right. Yeah. Yep. I think the trust factor is also another piece that I'm really pulling from this. And I know this just from when we even think of working within our own buildings as educators in any profession. Really, you build trust, but to build it then to the outside, and again, brings me back to equitable partnership. It isn't just us in the building; it's the family, the community, and building that trust so we can move forward.
Absolutely.
Dr. Matt, but you have given us so much information today and hopefully have inspired our listeners to read your book, Everyone Wins. Um, as they dig into this idea about family and school partnerships and two-way communication and just leaning in to help see and hear families and students, what resources would you recommend to our listeners as they look to learn more about family school partnerships?
Thanks, Sarah. I think that I would recommend particularly to our practitioners in the audience that they look at the book Powerful Partnerships, because that was a book that I wrote with two teachers, Jessica Lander and Eileen Carver, two current practicing teachers who are extraordinary when it comes to building relationships of trust with families and integrating what they learn from families into their own practice. Jessica is a high school teacher, and Eileen has been I think a K-6 teacher throughout her long career in education. And so this is a how-to book for educators. It sort of set up that it starts in the summer and then works its way through the school calendar. It has a lot of tips and tools and a lot of good ideas that came from Jen and from Jessica and from Eileen. It talks about home visits. It talks about those phone call homes. It gives people step by step support and instructions on how to do that. So I think that that's probably a really nice resource for our practitioners is the Powerful Partnerships. It's a very user friendly guide. And then of course there's the old reliable Beyond the Bake Sale, which Ann and I published way back when, but still seems to be a good guide. And some people could call it sort of the master cookbook of family engagement. Again, it has a lot of tips and tools in it, not just for educators, but for families, parents who are trying to build partnerships with schools. So I think that overall, those two, and then finally, the last piece that we wrote, I wrote with one of my former doctoral students, Eyal Bergman. He's now Dr. Bergman. And during the pandemic, the Carnegie Corporation asked me if I would write a piece that would serve as sort of a call to action around family engagement. I have to be honest, when the pandemic started around April of 2020, my email blew up because I was getting emails from all over the world, quite frankly, that said, Dr. Matt, we now realize that family engagement is important because there wasn't anything that was going to happen if it wasn't with our families. And so now all those people who had sort of been a little bit reticent to lean into this were realizing that they had better get on board quick, fast, and in a hurry. And so, the Carnegie folks said, would you write a call to action? Where are we now? What should we be doing now? And embracing a new normal, I think, gives us some really um, powerful and some may say provocative language around what our family engagement practice needs to look like now. And we talk about how it needs to be liberatory, solidarity driven, and equity focused. We decided we were going to use words that were powerful and that hopefully brought visions of things. So liberatory meaning that all of us, no matter where we come from, when we engage in these partnerships, we should be free to be ourselves, to speak our truths. And solidarity driven leans into that trust, that relationship, that fellowship. Really important. We've got to compromise. We've got to come together. And then equity focus obviously is where, we're willing to go the extra mile for each other, reach out to our families where they're at. So I would say those three resources, Powerful Partnerships, Beyond the Bake Sale, and then Embracing a New Normal, I think would be really helpful. One other resource is a free, and I did say free, online course that we have through Harvard X. And this is it amounts to about a 6-week course. It's called Introduction to Family Engagement. People can look that up even if they just put my name in and put a free online course, it probably would come up. But it's a nice primer course on family engagement.
Thank you, Dr. Mapp. We always put a resources document together for our listeners, so we will link these things in, including the link to the Embracing the New Normal PDF, and we'll find your intro course that's free. Thank you.
And if people want to come to Cambridge, we do a summer institute. It's family engagement and education, FAM as we fondly call it. It's at the Ed School. It's one of our programs for professional education. We call them PPEs. It's a 4-day opportunity to do a deep dive into how to create these home, school, and community partnerships. It's a wonderful opportunity. So if any of your listeners would love to come to Cambridge, Massachusetts in July, that's something that they should look into.
Thanks for the invite.
We've asked some questions and appreciate all the expertise that you have offered. As we conclude this interview, what have we not asked that is important to highlight here?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good question. Well, I don't know if it's that you didn't ask it. Maybe I didn't have an opportunity to sort of lean into this, but what I want to say to everybody out there is that, being an educator is what I call love work. And we don't often talk about love in this business. And I say to my students that, as they go out into the world and whether they're in policy work or not for profit work, or they decide to go back to the classroom, because many of our students are teachers or principals or other district level staff who come to get a master's or a doctorate. As they go back out into the world, I want them to know that, this work is about love. And if they don't think that they can love the students and their families, because we often hear people say, oh, I got into this business because I love kids. Well, kids are part of an ecosystem, everybody. So you can't just love the kids, you have to love the whole package. And so I often say to my students, if you don't think you can love the whole package, love the families, love the communities, then maybe this isn't the right career for you. It's not just about the kids. You have to embrace all that comes with them. And when you do that, again, as I said earlier, you're going to really love your work. You're going to feel fulfilled. So I know that in many cases it sounds like we're asking educators to do more. Really, it's just asking us to really think about how can we take the time that we're already spending with our families and communities and do it better in a more effective way, where we get to show our love for them. And guess what? When we do that, they'll show us their love for us. So again, I don't think we talk enough about how love is a part of this work. We get caught up in the numbers and the standards and the data, and we don't lift up the fact and talk about freely that this is really love work. And that's why I so enjoy being in this field, because I get to see people practicing with love pretty much every day, and it keeps me going. It keeps me passionate about the work.
I appreciate that point made and love that phrase that I know our listeners will carry away from this, carry on the love work, and not just the love work for the students, but the whole package, as you put it. And
Exactly.
I think that's a really good thing to walk away with. And I think you captured that nicely and set it up for asking that tough question. Is that the work you're signing up for? Because it's the whole package to continue the work and to move it forward. And it's become so important, I think, to think about that love work, especially with the pandemic and how it's challenged. And a lot of the things you referenced have made it sometimes hard for people in education to look and go, why am I in education? And this is a great love work piece to really kind of circle back, because many people at their core are in education for that reason. And it's a good reminder.
Absolutely.
I appreciate your candidness with us and the great back and forth conversation. Your passion shows very clearly through the interview, and that is just exciting. I know also, and you referenced it, I'm forever a Beyond the Bake Sale person, and I can't go anywhere without referencing that work. And I've been moved by these West Michigan literacy summits we aren't currently having here in the Grand Rapids area, but still love the idea what they were. And again, I do carry that beyond the bake sale message. So thanks for your work and your continued work to keep us abreast of the most current knowledge around this topic of bringing family and school partnerships together through different implications and practices that you've explored for us to help us be more efficient. Much appreciated, Dr. Mapp.
Well, thank you so much, Mark and Sarah. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us for this LLCN brief podcast today. We appreciate our guest, Dr. Karen Mapp. Thank you for sharing your insight into family school partnerships and implications for practice. If you're looking to access the resources from today's podcast episode, please visit our electronic document, LLCN 2022-2023 resources at bit.ly/L C resources 2223. Again, that link is bit.ly/LLCN resources 2223.
We look forward to connecting with you again in the near future. Also, we're looking for your suggestions on topics as well as questions you may have related to literacy. Please take the time to let us know what you want to learn more about through the Google form. bit.ly, bit.ly / capital L, capital L, capital C, capital N, all lowercase topics. Again, bit.ly / capital L, capital L, capital C, capital N, all lowercase topics.
Did you know you can now earn sketchies by listening to the LLCN Brief podcast? We are excited to announce the launch of our new micro PD, Podcast PDX. Podcast PDX is bite sized learning that allows you to earn sketchy credit for doing something you already love, listening to the LLCN Brief podcast.
We know you are busy. This professional learning opportunity will meet you where you are, anytime, anywhere. You can earn up to 1.25 sketchy credits per episode by listening and briefly reflecting. We have made it easy to earn your credits. Just visit our podcast PDX homepage, which can be found at bit.ly / all lowercase podcast, capital P, capital D, lowercase x. Again, that homepage can be found at bit.ly / all lowercase podcast, capital P, capital D, lowercase x. At this homepage, you will find 3 easy steps to take to get you on the road to earning sketchy credit while listening to your favorite literacy podcast. Thank you for listening today.